Hello and welcome to tutorial number 6 on the feeling, and this one is on the second lead in this big group here. So if I play it for you, it's this one, the second one. What a cute little sound that is. Anyway, I may or may not do the overview thing at the beginning depending on how this turns out, because it is a very simple sound. So we'll see how we go. So I'll turn all these back on and get into this. Open Citrus. Turn operator 1 to a saw and declick and band limit it, and turn operator 2 down an octave. FM 2 and 1 into each other a little bit. Turn the Gibbs Effect off and pitch everything up an octave. Have 3 voices of unison. Turn off the pan, turn the pitch up slightly, and turn the phase up just below half. Route everything into the filter, and give the volume and filter cutoff a bit of an envelope. The volume envelope should give it a sharp attack with a little bit of release, and a tiny bit of attack. And the cutoff envelope should have a bit of an upwards attack. Add a parametric EQ. Cut out the high frequencies, cut out the low frequencies, and turn up the 3 and 5 a little bit. Right, here we are, Citrus. Okay, so it basically just began with, because I knew I was going for a lead. What's the first thing you do when you're making a lead? Set it to a saw wave, of course. Now, next thing I did is do declick and band limit here, which I guess I can talk about. So declick, just, I'm not sure 100% what it does.
It just makes it sound very, way more stronger.
I'm sure the manual will say if I press F1, little tip for you there, but it just adds a very short attack kind of thing. So a very short attack envelope, kind of like that, I guess, to sort of stop it from going when it starts, to stop it from clicking when it suddenly begins. So listen to it on, off. I can barely hear it, but you know, I'd turned it on nonetheless. Much more noticeable is band limit. So take a look at this here. Look at how noisy this is. I'm not going to play it for too long so I don't rape your ears, but look between all the different spikes, all the different like actual harmonics, you'll see there's a lot of noise and shit in between them. Turn on band limit. Gets rid of it, and it makes the wave sound a lot clearer. Now, as far as I understand, band limit kind of mangles the shape of the wave. So even though it sounds clearer to our ears, it looks on a graph less of a perfect saw wave. And so the problem with that is, if you're FMing something, even though it sounds indistinguishable to our ears, if you're using something that you've band limited as a FM, like an FM modulation source, then it's going to be a really weird shape and it's going to sound all unusual. So let's say if I FM these together, say this just should be a saw wave, I suppose. If I band limit this, ooh, it sounds all wrong and horrible, doesn't it? Because the actual shape of the wave, like the very sharp corners, aren't perfect, and even though it sounds indistinguishable, in fact better to us, because a lot of the high frequency bollocks has been removed, when you use it as something that's been band limited as a modulation source, it becomes all noisy and weird because the shape isn't perfect, basically. So generally, if you're going to hear it, band limit it so that your ears don't get destroyed. If you're going to use it as modulation, you're not going to hear it directly. Don't band limit it because it's going to be all not quite perfect in shape. Nice, that was actually a fairly high quality explanation. I'm very proud of myself. Anyway, so let's move on. So the very next thing I did was have operator 2, which is a sine wave at 1 times. And then I FM'd the 2 together a little bit, sort of like that. Just to give it a bit more, just to make it a bit more interesting, because I don't want to use a plain saw wave. That's what everybody does. So I just wanted to change it a bit, I suppose. Anyway, so after that, what I did was, in the main tab, turn on Gibbs off. And let's take a look at, let's listen to what this sounds like now. So you'll notice again that it makes it a lot sort of it gets rid of some of the high frequencies and makes it a lot less ow my ears kind of thing up at the very top, which is extremely useful. It's another thing, kind of like band limiting I talked about a moment ago, which mangles the shape of the wave when you're looking at it, but like sounds a lot better to us, sort of thing. So, as far as I understand, right, I've got the Wikipedia article open here for Gibbs phenomenon. This is the Gibbs effect. So basically, what the Gibbs effect is just a square wave is just a infinite series of odd harmonics, right? It's just all the odd harmonics played all at the same time, infinitely. That's how you get a perfectly shaped square wave. But we can't hear infinitely high harmonics because we're humans, you can only hear up to 20 kilohertz. So if we only use enough harmonics up to 20 kilohertz, for example, we have a shape that isn't perfect. Now this isn't 20 kilohertz, I don't know what it is, but the point is if you only use a finite number of harmonics, you can't get the perfect square wave shape because we can't hear frequencies that high, right? So it kind of ruins the shape of it as like a modulation source, but it makes it sound the same without having to have, an infinite number of frequencies coming out of your computer, which is obviously quite tricky. So, Gibbs off, as far as I can tell, is some sort of really harsh high pass at the top. Now, don't take my word for it, but as far as I understand, it's a sort of a very harsh high pass to get rid of these unfriendly shapes right on the corners of the wave. So I'm going to try and demonstrate that. If I play a C5 note here, you can kind of see that. Let me get a wave candy out. For those of you who don't know, you can right click the update knob in wave candy to set it to a particular note. So I'm going to choose C0 and then play a C note. Okay, I'll choose some other C, right. So turn it all the way up like this. When I turn Gibbs off, you see we have these really sharp edges kind of thing. So actually, yeah. And Gibbs off helps get rid of those, which makes it sound a lot nicer to us. Even though it is less pure and mathematically perfect, it makes it sort of sound a bit less painful in the head. Anyway. So the next thing I did to this lead was pitch it up an octave. Fairly standard stuff. And then a bit of unison. All I really did here was turn the pan all the way down, the pitch up the tiniest bit, and then the phase up a bit below half. And now you'll notice that the sound is pretty much done. You can basically easily hear what the rest of this sound is now, can't you? So let me find out. This one, isn't it? It's basically the same. All there is left is to put operator 1 into the filter, just like we did in the last tutorial, so that we can have a volume envelope. Now the actual volume envelope kind of made it a sharp bang kind of sound. So I'll turn the filter itself off for now. A sharp attack, little bit of release like that. And then basically the crux of this sound, the main, most important thing, is a little bit of filter cutoff attack that goes up like this. Sorry, I forgot to turn the filter on. Turn the filter on. Yeah, alright, so I'm not sure if I did this in the original, but you can kind of hear when the attack is at 0 on the volume envelope, there's a bit of an unpleasant clicking when I play it. So to kind of fix that, I will turn this up just a tiny bit, the tiniest bit of attack. That's much nicer. Nice. So that's all there is to that, really. That is the whole entire sound. All there is left is one single parametric EQ, which just looked something a bit like, kind of like that, I think. Now, there are two things to talk about here. Number one, this EQ was probably done alongside the other leads. So I imagine while I was doing this, I would have noticed that other leads had a lot of shit in 4 and 7. So I decided to sort of get rid of these comparatively so that it was, fitting in like a jigsaw puzzle with the other leads. Also importantly, you'll notice that I haven't cut out the lowest frequencies. And that is because the original lead, wherever it was, I can't remember, has been routed into subcut, which is mixer send over here, I'm sure I'll talk about later, which just is a high pass like this. So I didn't bother doing it here, seeing as I've routed it into here anyway. Why did you cut out the sub, you might ask? Well, because I don't need it, it's totally useless. This sound is not a bass, it doesn't need to have sub in it. The sub is extraneous and needs to be clipped away, so that the actual sub can, you know, shine through. Well, okay, well that is absolutely everything there is to this sound. That does it for this video completely, and I'll see you in the next one, which is the third lead. See you in a second.